So let me welcome Dr. Andrea Alù into our today's interview. And first, very serious and important question is, can you make a proper lasagna yourself?
No, that's too
No.
complicated. I can make pasta. I can make some basic dishes, but actually my wife is much better than me at cooking.
Well, that's how it should be, unless
She
one is
makes
chef.
very good lasagna, by the way, even if she's not Italian.
Good. I'm glad to hear that you're not deprived of that, despite living in the States. Although, of course, New York is the mecca of good food in general, anyway. Okay, so can you share a bit about your early life?
Yeah, I was born in Rome, in Italy, and I studied. I was interested in science and math since I was young, so I liked the type of topics that later would become my job. I did the Liceo Scientifico, that is the kind of scientific branch of high school in Italy. In Italy, in education, you already get specialized quite early in your interests. And then in college, I chose electrical engineering mostly as a way to do scientific science, physics, and math, but also have a more applied angle to it, based on advice from multiple people that maybe physics and math on their own would be a little bit too challenging in terms of future job opportunities in Italy. But within electrical engineering, I got interested already pretty early into electromagnetics because I guess of all the topics that we were learning in the first couple of years of the classes was the one that had most of the basic physics. In Italy, by the way, electromagnetics is mostly driven through engineering schools because it's the tradition of Guglielmo Marconi that funded some of the top schools in electromagnetics in Italy. One in Rome, of course, he was based in Rome, one in Naples, and one in Turin. And so I was lucky to be already in Rome in the University of Roma Tre, that is a spin-off of the University of La Sapienza, where some of the disciples of Marconi were teaching. So I continued and specialized in the last years of college. In Italy, you start specializing in your field of interest. That was electromagnetics for me. So I took several courses, mostly theoretically oriented in EM. And then I was somehow lucky to, or I'm not sure, at that time I didn't feel lucky, but basically I was very interested in continuing in the academic career by doing a PhD in Rome, but for some strange combination of events in my university, there was no PhD program for the first 2 years after I graduated from college. So I had to find somehow other things to do while I was waiting for the PhD program to restart. And so the first year I was lucky to win a fellowship from one institution in Italy, IET. It is the Institute of Electrotechnical Engineers. And they had a competition for just fresh graduated student from electrical engineering to spend 1 year abroad in a research institution of their choice. And I had admired during my undergraduate thesis the works of Nader and Guetta. In particular, I had studied his works on fractional calculus. At that time, I was working on this idea of using fractional calculus, fractional derivatives for for new wave engineering, new forms of wave engineering. And I contacted him. I told him I was self-funded to visit his group, and luckily he had time and an opening for me. So I was able to join him for the whole year in 2002. That was my first experience abroad in Philadelphia. Then I planned to go back anyways. So in 2003, I spent 1 year taking a master again while I was waiting for the PhD program to restart. Also in the same university, Roma Tre, where I had studied my undergraduate. But I continued. That first year with Professor Engheta was very productive, and it was really good timing because he had started to get interested in the field of metamaterials. It was a new field of studies at that time. The first papers on negative refraction, on the perfect lens from John Pendry and David Smith and others had just come out. And he had also published an interesting idea of using negative refraction to make compact resonators. And given that I was self-funded and free to work on any topic, he was interested out of curiosity in involving me in these early explorations, and that was a very good timing for me. Even if I had gone to study something else, I ended up doing a lot of work on these ideas of combining materials with different indices, different permittivities. So we had the first papers, they got a lot of attention, and I continued interacting with him. He continued to invite me basically for the summers while I was in Italy, and I spent a few months every year since then going back to Philadelphia to work with him, and then we would actually interact a lot over phone, and at that time there was no Zoom or no other forms of connections that are, I mean, we used Skype, I guess, or these forms of video connections. But it worked very well, and even if finally I was able to start my PhD in 2003, I kept visiting him and kept working with him in parallel, and we had some good highlights. We had the first paper on cloaking using metamaterials in 2005, and then we continued interacting. It was a lot of good ideas, good discussions, and the field was kind of fresh and starting. So eventually, after my PhD was done, I decided, also based on his advice, that there were a lot of opportunities in the US to expand my interests and my drive in this field. So I decided to join him as a postdoc. So finally, I was actually enrolled in his group in 2007, in 2008, and then in 2009 I moved to Austin, where I was a professor for 9 years. And then in 2018 I moved here in New York. There was this great opportunity to start from scratch, basically a research center focused actually on these topics of nanoscience, photonics. So we have a really impressive facility, and having started from being a pure theorist, it's nice to be in charge of actually a very large team of motivated and brilliant scientists that do both theory and experiments in this area, and it's an exciting time actually. The center is going very well. We have good publications, good funding coming in, and good recognition from the community. So it's an exciting time, and I'm happy how the things are going and how the transition from Philadelphia to Austin to New York has been going in the last 10 years or so.
Right. I want to touch a little bit. I want to come back a little bit and ask you actually. So you said you were interested in physics from early on, but I wonder, like, did you always know that that's something you'll pursue, or did you try different things first? Because from what you were saying, it kind of sounded like you were also maybe searching a little bit.
Yes, no, I didn't have a clear I was not sold out to just do physics. I actually mostly was driven or was very curious about math from the early stages of my studies. And so maybe if I had to choose just based on my interests from high school, I would have maybe gone to math. But for a series of advices and things, and at that time, as usual, you are not that experienced in life, or you follow advices from older people. And I happened to live in a condo building in Rome with in which on the floor downstairs from my floor where my parents lived, there was a professor of electrical engineering from Roma 3, from the university where I went. And so my parents connected me to him, and he gave me the strong advice that doing engineering would open a lot more doors. In electrical engineering in particular is a, and he was right, is a broad area of disciplines. They are all kind of math and physics related, so there is certainly an opportunity to learn a lot in the first 2 years and then be able to choose the specialization as you go forward. And within typically in Italy, the first 2 or 3 years are very, you see a lot of things, you do some basic courses, fundamental, but then you sample applied things. So the things that interested me the most, that I think are the most fundamentals in electrical engineering, are electromagnetics and information theory, like communications or control. So those were the topics I liked the most. And then there was a professor in electromagnetics, Lucio Vegni, that from the first course was very engaging and adamant to work together. So he involved me already in research projects from the second year of my college, and he brought me to conferences. So it was very convincing that this was a right path. And given that in Italy electromagnetics has a strong theoretical flavor, it was a good fit for me. So I remember this was well before even metamaterials were a thing, but he would give us already in the second year of course, the first electromagnetic field theory course, problems in which he would, these were actually exercises for homeworks and for exams, in which he would give us a tensor with of permittivity or permeability or binisotropic media, completely without much connection with reality actually, but would ask us how do waves propagate in this media. So even before I even knew that these things could be built, I actually was wondering why were we even studying this type of strange mathematical constructs. But it did appeal to me, was an interesting puzzle, kind of mathematical problem that it's one of things that in general attracts my interest. And what's beautiful is that later on in my career I could make this a reality somehow. Now we know how to build some of these strange materials, and we know how to connect some of these mathematical constructs with reality. And that's actually what we've been doing all these years in the field of metamaterials, of asking what if questions on this. What if I had this material, and then we can actually go in the lab and to some extent build and test these ideas in real experiments.
Right, right. Yeah, that's interesting that you actually connected the dots only those years later. This professor from Italy was basically, exposing you to that tensor math as a part of, well, I guess, teaching the students to think, right,
Yeah.
outside the conventional framework. So, but then obviously years later, it kind of the dots connected.
Really.
Interesting. Okay, so a bit different question. Well, okay, obviously you already mentioned that the professor that lived in the same building as your parents was one of the big influences on your direction in life and work. So, do you maybe have any like other life events, mentors, or friends that significantly influenced your direction in life?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Nederen was certainly great mentor, and Lucio Vegni also, in the first years of my undergrad, is also my PhD advisor later on, and certainly these are great, have had a great influence in my life. And then also a lot of random turn of events, right, to where I am. I think everyone has these stories, but yeah, if probably if a PhD were available at the time in which I graduated from college, I would not have pursued the adventure of going to the US and connecting with Nederen. There was also another strange set of events. At some point in the second year that I was waiting for the PhD, I was interested in doing a PhD in another university of Rome, in La Sapienza, and also that for some random reason didn't work out. And then this helped me basically stay more in touch with Nederen and continue my interactions with him also through my PhD. So oftentimes there are all these strange events, right? Even being here in New York is a little bit random. Like I was for 9 years in Austin. I was very happy there. It's a top engineering school, and I didn't have really any reason to move to a place where there was no lab and no infrastructure or no colleagues. But I have a great former colleague from Austin and collaborator that is in New York and was insisting for me to just check out this place and the opportunity. I was quite resistant because I didn't have any real reason to leave Austin, but then I followed these convincing arguments about checking out the place, and when I came, I was amazed by the opportunity, how much space, beautiful building, and resources to build this up from scratch, and basically also the freedom of choosing what equipment, what structure was available. And this at some point entered my mind, and I decided that this was the right timing and right occasion to get a new fresh start in my career. And I'm very glad that worked out as it did.
What does it mean to be successful in life for you?
Mostly, what I enjoy, I don't know if I'm successful, but what I enjoy of my life is that throughout I've been able to do what I like. We get to basically solve puzzles still now, as I like to do when I was a kid. But especially in the US, at least my experience, you get the opportunity to do it from since when you're young, and they give you resources, they trust, and of course they're evidently happy about the outcomes of this, but there is no pressure about delivering certain things or short-term vision. So I'm very happy that I'm in this position in which I can choose what to explore. I can have fun, learn from collaborators, students, postdocs that join us with also broad range of expertise. And I like that we are recognized, that even in New York, almost every week these days I get visits from colleagues, people that go by through New York and want to spend time to visit us, discuss science, see what we have now as a really nice lab. So I feel that from the science point of view, this has been a success. It's a great great position that has come out over the years. As in life, of course, success is not just work, but I'm happy to have a supportive family, and we have been happy with the move to New York. We like to live in this area. I see my family doing well. So all of this is also a great success for me.
Okay. What do you consider the biggest lessons in your life, if there is something that that maybe didn't go the way you wanted?
I mean, I would say what I try to tell my students and my postdocs. First of all, my feeling is that academia, as you probably already mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, has been changing quite a lot. And when I was student or postdoc, there was less immediate pressure about publishing or getting into this journal versus that journal, getting enough citations, enough metrics, this or that. And I feel that nowadays I have a large group with many great students, postdocs, very good, very successful, actually, many things. But especially some of them, they have this on the back of their mind. They are bugged by how do I get this number of citations? How do I get this paper published here and not there? And my advice continues to be that you should not necessarily be just aiming at these numbers or my feeling is that good science gets recognized. That's my experience over the years. In a way or another, it doesn't have to be the citation or because going with this type of metrics tend to force you to explore certain things that are already in vogue, that are already popular. And my feeling, especially when someone is starting a postdoc or a PhD, the horizon is quite far away. It's 3, 4, 5 years ahead. And in 3, 4, 5 years, things go in cycle. Whatever is hot and popular now may not be the thing that universities or companies are looking for. So the best thing is to do something that one is excited for. I think the advantage of doing research in academia is that you can really study what you are excited for. You can actually be driven by curiosity and by passion rather than by having a short-term goal of in 6 months I need to have this experiment done and demonstrate this or the other thing. So that flexibility should be a thing to thrive, not wasted on other pressure or pushes that come from the environment. So I hope, and I don't give this pressure to my group, but I try to actually avoid it completely. But I see that it's growing, especially in some. I tend to attract also people that are driven and that they want to be successful, especially in academia. They see that our former group members have been going to good schools and they're doing well. But at the same time, there is no guarantee and no recipe that this works for everyone. But the good thing of this field and this academic world is that we can do we can follow our passion, we can follow our curiosity. So that's my life lesson is that in general I've been doing this over and over, not necessarily. Sometimes I get asked, do you want this large amount of funding and get involved in this project? But if it's not something that I'm excited about or that I want to pursue, the funding is not necessarily the goal. The goal is to get to discover new things and demonstrate things that maybe are just a curiosity at the beginning. So if it's something that interests me, yes, I'm happy to be involved, and I pursuing also with the help of my group and collaborators, but it shouldn't be, the goal shouldn't be the metrics or the numbers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, today definitely. I mean, in some sense, to me, it's natural progression in the research as such. That like a few centuries ago, there was a lot less knowledge sort of accessible and on the table, and as time passed, a lot more has been accumulated. So now we're in the time that let's say the mainstream is to focus on the performance on delivering and developing and meeting deadlines and numbers, so to say. So in some sense, it makes sense, but yeah, definitely, it's bringing a lot of stress to the students these days and postdocs generally, because in the end, like the venues where you publish and how many papers you publish and how much funding you acquire is something that you're measured against, right? When you're trying to advance your career in the end. So
yeah, but at the same time, I have to say that at least in the US, I don't know other countries, but and that's what I keep preaching to my group is that when you apply for a faculty job or when you apply for a company position, my experience has been, even working in Austin, that is a top kind of engineering school, or in now at CUNY, we have a good group in photonics. We have been, typically every year we receive many applicants that apply for our faculty openings. My experience over the years has always been that the hiring is very holistic. We do not look at numbers. We don't look at the number of citations. Or if we do, that thing is maybe the 10th, or it comes far after many other things. What I keep telling my group is that the fundamental key of success is that you have a story to tell, that you can convince the recruiting committee that you are very good, you have a valuable idea of where you want to go, you have done one or two or three or four key groundbreaking discoveries, and you have a vision forward. They don't even necessarily want to bet on one thing that you have already done, but they want to invest on the person. They want to count on the fact that next you will do many more exciting things that you don't even have started, you have not even started to about. I have a good anecdote about this. Like a couple of years ago, we were recruiting our one of our faculty that now is here, and we had shortlisted first. We had over 200 applicants. We shortlisted 10. We did Skype interviews, and then we selected 3 for the on-site interview. And I was having lunch with a colleague in another field, and I mean it's the same field but another university, and I was discussing with them on the selection, on who we were considering, what topics, what fields we were looking at, because the call is broad in photonics. And the first thing they asked is, what is their H index? And we had gone through all these rounds of interviews, and I had no idea. No one in the committee had asked, and no one had looked at what the H index of these 3 finalists was. So we didn't play any factor in the decision of. We were going for people that would be valuable to what we already have here, and in Austin was the same thing. So I know that other communities, other countries have a much different approach. Sometimes they really look just for numbers. For our case, in the US I see it a lot less, at least for now. I don't know if that will change, but I feel it's a healthier way of hiring that is based on looking at the person, reading even one paper. It's amazing paper. I don't care that you don't have another 100 behind you, but if there is an amazing thing you have done that really fits with what we need, that's enough. I've seen people in Austin big hired with one paper published. And yet it was a groundbreaking paper. The reference letters were from very, very strong people that were saying this guy is the next big thing, and you really want to hire him. And that's much more valuable than having 10 extra papers that
Right.
in random fields. Yeah.
So it's admirable that you actually apply this way of hiring in your group, but you say that there is a committee. So it's not just you and
Yeah.
the people in your group who are deciding, right? And so, which means that this approach to the hiring is faculty-wide. It's not just your group.
Absolutely.
Is that so?
Yeah. And this applied both here in CUNY, actually in CUNY, I mean, it's a complicated structure. CUNY is a federation of 23 universities that are across New York City. We are just a very tiny campus. We have only 20 faculty in our center, but there are 22 other bigger campuses around us. And given kind of the visibility of our center in terms of research, when we hire, we do not choose only, it's not just me choosing. It's actually a committee that comes from different campuses of CUNY. That because we want to hire someone that can be beneficial for CUNY at large, not just for our center. And yes, it has been a consensus wide of the. And by the way, CUNY is not necessarily known as a top research institution, even if they have brilliant people, by the way, around all the campuses. But Austin, for instance, is kind of recognized as a top engineering school, also had a very similar type of approach to hiring. I mean, you may look at some of these numbers, but typically the committee was very holistic. We would, if we want to interview someone, we would read their top papers. Like, what are your top 5 papers? We want to read them before we even start discussing. There was always a champion for a person we were discussing that would read the papers, would describe why this person would be an asset. And that plays a much bigger role than any number you may have.
So I've noticed that recently in Netherlands, they've started spearheading the way the academic hiring processes should be going. And that's exactly what they're saying, that they're switching to the more narrative process, where what you mentioned, and that the story is the most important, because obviously the committee is composed of people who mostly are not in your field. So it's really more about the story and the person. But it sounds like in the States, it's already a common thing. Or would you say it's not as common, and you were just, let's say, in those right places?
I mean, my experience is that that's the case. I don't know that it's true in every school and in every discipline, but in our discipline, especially kind of engineering-oriented hiring, I have the feeling that the raw numbers are not important at all. Even, by the way, in funding, in grant funding, they do not ask to what is your H index, what is your citation. They want to read a good proposal. They want to understand what are you going to do with the money. When I served on review panels, no one discussed what is the past production. Of course, it is a factor, because if you are well known in the community, that's great. It's a positive. But it's not, if you write a bad proposal, it's not going to be funded. And generally, for instance, another anecdote I can tell, sometimes I have, especially more senior postdocs, that feel that pressure of getting to the Google Scholar higher metrics, that say, I want to write, this year I want to write 2 review papers, because these review papers bring hundreds of citations, and that will bring me into the next class. And I keep telling, I mean, I'm not against writing review papers. It's a good exercise. Sometimes even it's good to enter a new field and understand what has been done. But my advice is, if you write N review papers and you get these thousands of citations because of these review papers, and then you go to the interview, what do you tell them? What have you done? Or what are you going to do next? Are you going to keep writing review papers? Because, as I said, at some point, the huge factor in being hired is the final interview, in which you have to give a 1 hour presentation to the broad faculty and get them all excited. If you get to that stage, the people in your field are already excited because they've selected you. But you need to make sure that everyone else in the department or in the school gets excited. And you cannot tell them that I've studied this field and I've written a review. That's irrelevant, completely irrelevant to the. So that's why it's a lot more important to have the key cool result that you have done, that you can show you have championed and driven forward, than just having a citation number. No one in a presentation, you don't list your Google Scholar. No one will care about that, right? They want to, in fact, different fields in the same department. That's my experience in being in a large electrical engineering department for many years. There are fields in the department that don't even submit papers. They only submit conference papers, and they have very different metrics than what we're used to in the field of optics, electromagnetics. So you cannot even impress them by saying, I published 2 papers in science. They may not even know what science is, almost. So it's much more important that you are able to tell a cohesive story of your career to date and show, I did this, I did that. No one thought about this before. And now, joining your department and working with you guys, I'm going to get into a very new, exciting step in my career and demonstrate another great thing. That's the type of how one should, in my opinion, strategize for their PhD studies, postdoc studies as they get more mature.
Right. Okay. Are you spiritual in any way? And if not, what are your life's bigger picture beliefs?
Yeah. I'm Catholic, Roman Catholic, as many Italians. And, I grew up in Rome, actually close to the Vatican. So I've even played for the Vatican basketball team. So I've been like I'm religious in that sense. It's don't have any kind of more specialized beliefs, but also in the US there is a good community of Catholics, especially on the East Coast. So many the Italians or Italian Americans in the area have sometimes a lot even stronger traditions than even in Rome. It's kind of rooted into the culture. It feels more of a choice and cultural thing here in the US. In Italy, it's more essentially almost everyone has a similar background here. Instead, of course, there are many different religions and cultures. But yeah, so it's and I tried also to educate or instill this in my son, and it's a good culture and tradition, in my opinion.
Right. So what does the balance between the work, family, friends, or hobbies mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, I work a lot, but it's but because I love it. I like the thrill of the science, and I'm passionate. Also, it's a competitive environment in which many smart people are thinking about similar problems. So, but at the same time, of course, I have a family. My wife is very supportive, and she also has an academic job, and so I try to spend time. Actually, now these days I'm alone. My wife is at the conference, so typically she takes most of the burden of the activities of my son and after school. And now these days I have to actually plan more and more on my mind in terms of the timings and picking up and dropping at various other activities. But this is typically more handled by my wife. But at the same time, we try to have a good balance and to make sure that we're not forgetting that we are family. And the most important thing is really the having a balanced and successful life on all fronts. we tend to spend also time with our families in Europe during the summer and during the winter break. So it's we're lucky in that sense that our jobs allow us also to continue in different locations and travel, and that helps keep the connections also to our cultures.
Right. So now I'll switch to more like work or professional direction related questions. So it's obvious why you actually went to the States, because at the time there was no, well, it seemed like one of the few options you had in a way. But I hear that I did an interview previously with Andrea Neto, who is in Netherlands, and he was saying that the Italian funding system is actually rather generous, like meaning that when you get funding, yeah, you can also do whatever you want. And that there is no, basically what you said, you know, as is in the States, that there is the trust. So did you ever consider going back to Italy, or you just went with the flow of opportunity that was coming to you?
I mean, I want to clarify. I had the opportunity to stay in Italy. Actually, the support from my undergraduate advisor and then PhD advisor, Lucio Vegni, was very, very strong. And I could have stayed in Italy, in Rome, and wait for a PhD in Roma 3 or explore other PhDs in other schools. I mean, it was just a turn of events that because the PhD was not available, I decided to apply for this quite prestigious award. By the way, they give out only one per year, and it's full funding for the whole year to go wherever you want with no strings attached. So when I got this, I decided, even if I had ties with Italy, my family, my girlfriend at the time, so it was not necessarily an easy choice, but I thought it was an amazing opportunity to take advantage of. Maybe I wouldn't have done it if there was a PhD, but I was not forced to leave, and also I was not at all forced to leave after the PhD. I had many opportunities to stay as a faculty or a senior researcher in Italy as well. I mean, right now, I don't think I'm at a stage that I would consider going back, simply because the center that I'm in now, and that it finally reached a steady state after 5 years, is pretty amazing, pretty impressive in terms of the opportunity. I can see a lot of science breakthroughs coming out of this. We have amazing facilities, a lot of support from CUNY, from the US government, from foundations that are also based in New York. I don't think it would be easy to translate this in another environment in Italy or even somewhere else. Like at some point, I spent 1 year sabbatical in Holland, in Amsterdam, in 2015. I had a beautiful year with many great colleagues in Amolf. I still collaborate with many of them. But I had opportunities to stay there or move to Holland. My wife is Dutch, so there was also family link. But when I started exploring a little bit what the environment or the opportunities would be, it would be very difficult to get this level of support for, as I said, curiosity-driven basic research type of activities. So I think US is particularly good to keep going with this type of profile and research. I wouldn't see how this could translate easily into a different. Also, just in terms of inertia, right? Right now, I have so much connections. I know how the system works. I know who to ask if money runs out. And going to a different system, it's probably not straightforward. So that is my only. I mean, I would love to be able to be closer to my family, I guess, or friends, but it may not be realistic at the moment. At least I don't have it as plan even in the near or mid-term future. At the same time, I do think Italy is doing great. I actually end up recruiting a lot of Italians. My group is full of great junior scientists that want to join as PhD, postdocs, and very active. The education is fantastic. I feel from Europe, the background that they get is very, very good. So I don't at all want to speak badly about the, the system there. It seems to be doing excellent. And yes, resources are more limited, but the education is amazing. The research also, there are many great research groups. I have many collaborators there that are doing excellent work with the resources they have. I visited the last summer La Sapienza, for instance, a group of Claudio Conti and other groups in physics and engineering. I was very impressed by the level of science they carry on, and yes, maybe some of the equipment is a little bit more outdated than what we have here. Of course, it is a new center, so everything is new. But at the same time, the quality is excellent. There are a lot of great people, and this is true, by the way, all over Europe. It's in Amsterdam as well, in Holland. It's a great community. There are many other communities across all countries in Europe that are doing very, very well.
Yeah, I would agree that definitely the Western Europe has the highest quality education. But for example, myself, I've studied in Czech Republic and Brno University of Technology, and I can tell you that there, in let's say the former Soviet countries, the education is definitely more application oriented.
Yeah.
Than anything else. Definitely going more to the West.
Yeah.
It's more focused on fundamentals.
Yeah. From my side, for me, it's more difficult to recruit actually domestic US students. The background in terms of education at the college level in our field, electromagnetics, optics, it's oftentimes not the most appealing to the brightest students. So that's maybe a difference compared to Europe. I mean, to give you an example, my former department in Austin, electrical engineering, has essentially no faculty that is hardcore electromagnetics at the moment. That is very surprising. Out of the 70 plus body of people that teach all disciplines of electrical engineering, no one is teaching electromagnetics. I mean, of course, they do have courses in electromagnetics, but taught by people that may have other expertise in acoustics or in optics. And this is an indication of how, for the type of research I do, I prefer to get someone, I guess, from Europe that has followed 5 years of strong preparation in courses relevant to electromagnetics, has already seen a background, or China, by the way. China is growing tremendously in this field. And this is a difference. I think here, probably people also for financial reasons are attracted by other types of disciplines like AI or machine learning, software engineering at this time. So it's
right.
difficult.
Yeah. It's all the rage these days, AI and machine learning for sure.
Yeah.
What are the essential skills for a fruitful career as a researcher?
Yeah. So you want to discuss kind of science or just general?
More like general, I'd say. Yes.
Maybe let me turn on. So you wanted to talk about generally how to get a good career in science?
Basically, yes.
I mean, I think my best advice, I think we discussed already last time, is the follow your interests and your passion more than anything. So the curiosity-driven research, I think it's the one that helps the most in in driving the field forward and be successful.
Right, but then at the same time, it's there's more to an academic career than being able to follow your passion and your curiosity, isn't it?
Yeah, that I mean, it's hard to tell. It also depends, I guess, a lot on the field of study, and my feeling is that I have colleagues and good friends in different fields, from biology to math or more theoretical research, and I see that all of us do very different jobs. But maybe the common theme is this one of being able to push the envelope, to follow, to maybe not just follow what others are doing. I believe that's one danger of being a scientist. Sometimes we just try to build kind of incremental steps on other discoveries, but oftentimes if we can follow ideas that may be a bit out from the general trend, then my experience has been that over time they are appreciated, they are picked up, and it's a good way of kind of building a name, building a reputation. I think some time ago I was visiting the American Physical Society, and the colleagues, the editors that handle some of the papers when we submit to APS journals. And it was interesting because they brought up the list of papers that we wrote, also not necessarily in like the most visible, like also in regular physical review journals like PRB or PRE, PRA. And it was an interesting exercise to see a posteriori. They keep track of the citations and the interest that these papers have raised. And sometimes it would be hard to tell, at least for me, which papers actually became kind of in the top 10 of the most successful papers, at least from the point of view of the editors. At the time of submission, I think, I mean, many of these, I see a lot of our work as solving puzzles in some ways, and addressing some questions that we have the lack of having a job that allows us to pose these questions and try to answer them. And some of them, for some reason, sometimes difficult to control, become interesting to the community and get traction for future research.
So it sounds like that basically the or an impact a paper can have or not is not necessarily connected to where it's published, if it's a popular journal or not.
Yeah, my feeling is that this is true. In general, I mean, many people say this, right? It's not as important the avenue, but the citation. I was actually referring more to the fact that even for a given paper, oftentimes it's hard to tell if it will be successful or not at the time of submission. But yeah, that's also true. At the same time, it's important to stress that it's also important for the young scientists, especially at this point in time, to publish in the right avenues, to get publicity. It's as important as doing very good science. It's true that in the long term, good science typically pays off. So even publishing in a journal that is not as visible as another, still in the long run may bring the paper up. But at the same time, given how the cycle of applications and the competition for faculty jobs or next steps in the career are short-term. Getting also good papers in good journals becomes increasingly important. It was not the case when I was a student or postdoc as much as it is now.
So would you say that for the early stage researchers, it's more important where they publish, while once you already somehow established, you are more free with what you're doing and where you publish or not?
That's certainly true. And I mean, I wouldn't say the message that you do not publish in journals that are not the flashy or glamour journals. But in fact, I do encourage my students and postdocs to publish longer papers that have more substance rather than only going for the flashy short papers. I believe also that has a big value when you apply for jobs. If you have a good combination of not just the surface, but also some depth. But at the same time, yes, I mean, I think we were discussing it the last time. The sometimes people that are very well established have the flexibility of saying, I'm not in this game anymore. I don't want to fight for months and months to get the paper in this journal or the other journal. I just submit all my papers to journals that just look at the technical content and are not after claims of groundbreaking advances or other types of breakthroughs. But at the same time, it's not really feasible in the world we live in the context of the group members. They typically need also that visibility more than the established scientists already made it. And for me personally, it doesn't really make a big difference if the paper is in one journal or another, but I mean, it's important for the group that we get into visible avenues, that the work is highlighted, and that we get visibility kind of in the short term, as if the research is good.
Right. So you've achieved pretty much, I'd say, everything that a professor or someone in academic world can actually strive for. Like tens of awards. You have your own lab. You have your own research group. And then what keeps you going? Because for most of the people in the industry, if I should call it, where you are, I'd say it's really somehow like a very long-term goal. But you're also relatively young and actually already have achieved all those. So what keeps you going?
Thank you, first of all. I mean, yeah, you are right. There is not really neither a financial incentive or a like professional reason to work necessarily very hard. I have a tenure position, and my salary is not linked to any achievement, or I don't get bonuses for extra papers or extra awards. But mostly I love the job. I'm passionate about driving the field and answering questions that are in the back of my mind. And also, I'm very lucky to have a very good group of talented upcoming scientists, and I love working with them and do more than I could do just myself. Especially the time is limited. Also, these days I've been lucky in the past years to be able to establish this very comprehensive and called dream lab, experimental lab, and I don't have much of my own experience in doing experiments or running experimental projects, and so also that having the opportunity to work with very talented young scientists, students and postdocs that can help drive some of the ideas into practice is very exciting. So I'm always thrilled when I see a new experiment that demonstrates some of the ideas or concepts we've been pursuing. So it's not I don't keep working hard because of financial reasons or professional reasons, but it's like the, the the curiosity and the exciting possibility to work with in this community and push forward the ideas and also the technologies that come out of these ideas.
Right. So it seems that, okay, for you, the main motivator is advancing the knowledge in your field, yeah, and see how far it can go. And this
Even
basically,
just for myself, by the way, oftentimes I'm really genuinely curious about how things work and the possibility to understand it and work with other colleagues to figure out these things. Sometimes, again, it feels like sometimes these are puzzles that are posed to us, and it's exciting to be able to address them.
right. So I'd say, I would guess that at this stage for you, like the creativity is actually quite important in your work. Well, what would you, say or about that? Like, is it important in research or not? I mean,
Yeah,
if so.
absolutely. I think in all fields of research, that's the one thing. Sometimes we face difficulties. It's not straightforward to drive a project to completion, and it's often the case to have these discussions with the students and postdocs, especially the junior ones, that when they join the group, sometimes they have the idea that this is straightforward. I will get. I had a conversation with an incoming student that the first meeting we had already the plan of writing 6 nature or science papers by the end of his PhD, as if it's like the norm or it's expected. And I told him there is no reason to expect that you would publish any paper. Anything we do, there is a lot of uncertainty. And typically, it's my job to try to give you a collection of problems, some maybe more low hanging than others, so that you have a good chance to get something done. But there are always difficulties, and that's a spirit of doing research. So creativity by everyone, by me, but also by the people in the group that do the work, it's extremely important, and can be creativity in coming up with the idea or the question, in addressing how to solve it, either on piece of paper, creativity in running better simulations, better models to match reality, and creativity in actually doing the experiment. It's always not straightforward to get to the result, and we have always to come up with new ways to fix challenges. So that's certainly probably most important. I would say creativity and motivation are the two biggest qualities that are needed to succeed in research.
Right. And I would maybe add resilience too, right? Because as you said, there's a lot of uncertainty in
Yes,
anything you're doing, right? So one really
absolutely.
needs that tenacity to just keep going, and
Yeah,
trying.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree. Yes, yeah, and this also comes from passion and willing to put the work in, and understanding that it's not something that is given. It's there are uncertainties, things that you cannot control, that may delay. So it's
Right.
we're lucky that we can follow our curiosity. I think in industry that's not necessarily the case, but it's also a job that requires motivation and persistence in making it work.
Right. So I've noticed you also cooperate with some companies in the industry. Can you tell a bit about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, especially in the past few years, our group is funded by a variety of sources. Some are most is government funding. There is some funding from private foundations. In particular, the Simons Foundation has been very generous with us in the last years, but also there is a good, healthy amount of funding from industry. We have good partners that are interested in our ideas and translate that into technologies. So sometimes we work when we get a project. Typically, we work closely with the technical team, and if they contributed to the results, we offer also sometimes to author. It's not necessarily the case that they want to be authors, by the way, that I find interesting. We had in Austin a project with a company that maybe I will not name just because they were. I mean, it was a great interaction, but in this project, we were having a lot of difficulties in getting the things to work. This was mostly due to the fact that typically these company projects tend to be more applied, and so also a proof of concept result is not necessarily the goal. You want something that actually works, meeting metrics or performance that may be quite stringent. And so we were spending actually several weeks, if not months, to try to fix things and make sure that this would meet the requirements. And then once the technical team that we were working with flew in our lab, and we showed them what we were struggling with, and they literally just touched the experiment, and they knew exactly what should be done in terms of really practical intuition of this was for an antenna problem, so it's pieces of metal flowing around, and it was really amazing to see how the practical experience of these senior technical people would fix a problem that we couldn't figure out for months. And in like 30 seconds, they fixed what needed to be fixed. And then we were very happy because the result was improved a lot also for a paper. And so we offered them, I mean, we've been discussing with you, you actually fixed our problem. So I think this makes it strong enough of a contribution that you should be an author of our paper. We can write it together. But they actually insisted not to be authors because from their point of view, actually, I mean, I think company dynamics are different than academics. They do not get much benefit by being authors. And also they were telling us sometimes this may reveal to competitors what you are actually interested in doing. So it may bring attention to something they don't want. So, of course, as academics, we need to publish. We cannot accept projects that in which we are not allowed to publish. So the agreement was that we would publish, but they didn't want to be part of the paper. In other cases, instead, they are interested. We are just starting actually a large collaboration with another company, and the technical team that will work with us stressed from the beginning that they come from academia. They're very interested in being involved also in the publication aspects. So they asked, as we start the project, they would love to be involved also in the technical aspects so that they can co-author with us. So I think there is a flavor of culture in different companies. But I think it's healthy. It's good for us. We get more attached to the reality because sometimes working for especially the more basic research funding agencies allow you to do things that may be far from what the real problems are. And also the students are very happy because they get to interact with actual technology. They can do internships sometimes in these companies. They can acquire more knowledge, and sometimes they even get hired after the projects. That's one of the goals of the company itself. My group specifically tends to have more people attracted to academia than industry, but in the last years, actually, we have had a good outflux of group members going to companies as well.
How so? I mean, if, as you said, most of them are interested in academia, how so they
I mean, I
they
think
venture?
my specific group, the type of publications and the type of research we do, tends to attract people that are very driven by the basic research and the curiosity-driven aspects. So typically, it's rare that I would recruit someone in my group that already has a plan to go to industry. Whereas I have many collaborators and group and other groups around us that their whole group or students and postdocs end up in industry. That's the norm in other groups. For us, it's not for sure. But at the same time, I've seen a trend recently that we have had, I think, the two last graduated PhD students last year both went to industry, to the Silicon Valley area, and we just had a postdoc that very recently left also for a company in the West Coast. I mean, I think it's a two-phase problem. One is that the companies tend to pay a lot better than academia. In fact, in one case, for instance, one of the students that graduated, in my opinion, was a very, very talented prospect professor, academic, and I actually offered him a faculty position in our center. I thought it would be brilliant, but I mean, and he would have loved to do it, but he told me that he already has the family, 2 kids, the wife is not working, and he said that 3 times the salary difference was a sufficient argument to move. And I'm still in touch. I still talk to them, and sometimes they miss the aspects of academia that, but at the same time, it's such a better fit for their family situation that, or also the postdoc that just this last week left for a company was also debating about industry and academia, but again, for family reasons, is recently married wife wanted to get settled basically, and the fact that there is so much uncertainty as a postdoc of where you will be in a year or in 2 years, the wife was pushing to have a permanent location where she could find a job because they had moved from abroad. And so he decided that given the good offer he had gotten, there is also the issue that companies have started to be more interested in our research. There is a huge interest in metasurfaces now from companies, and also the RF millimeter wave aspects are very big. So I see there is a lot of demand, and I see the same also for other groups in this area. That oftentimes I hear stories of students not even finishing their PhD because they get recruited out by companies, and they can be very aggressive with the offers. So it's a moment that is good. It means that the field is thriving, but sometimes it means also that the planning is not easy. But I'm
Right.
happy to, in general, I want the best for every one of my group members. So I encourage them, whatever feels to be the best choice, I'm supportive, and I try to help them get the best possible outcome for their career.
Right, it's true. It's true that also in a David Smith group, he actually even started a Metamaterials commercialization center together, and had a lot of, or has a lot of collaboration with intellectual ventures, which spun off definitely like up to 4 or 5 startups, I think. Which, by the way, are no more startups anymore. They're established companies. So yeah, definitely, Metamaterials as a field has definitely ripened. well, which is a good thing, but then obviously maybe the flip side of that is that the people tend to flock to industry from the research. So do you have goals that once you reach them, you will move on to something different, or is it the word just more of a, let's say, continual flow of interest in the field and developing it further?
Yeah, that's a good question. My research interests are quite broad, so I have several things that I would like to push forward in parallel, and that's also having a large group is a good thing in that sense, that I can see all the things evolving faster than what I could possibly do on my own. But I don't have really like a goal that ends a certain line. I think my experience is that every time you continue to investigate in a problem, 10 more problems come up and exciting directions. So it's not, it's more, I would say, a continuous flow. So far, I mean, the field is surprisingly rich, actually. I think recently I was interviewed by journalists about a paper we recently published, and he was asking me, how come there are so much excitement around waves? That is such an old problem. Like this, Maxwell's equations are over 150 years old, and so he was asking me, is it something quantum or something some new angle to electromagnetic waves? But because the specific problem of this paper is a completely classical problem, there is not much of a technology breakthrough that has driven it. It's really an idea that works and that no one had done before. So it is surprising how much can be done, and it still needs to be done in these areas, even of classical wave physics. Of course, it's also true that with the new technologies, progress in fabrication, quantum materials, we work a lot with new materials, then the horizon is even bigger and more exciting. So there is this combination of things. I also enjoy working with companies. I've been involved in a couple of companies directly as a CTO of a small startup and also as a strategic advisor of a larger company. And I consult also with other companies when useful. And this also is something that I enjoy. It's not necessarily a goal for me. My first priority is more this curiosity driven research, but the fact that I can also help on a practical level companies to be successful or commercialize some of these ideas. It's something that it's not necessarily an ultimate goal, but it's something that makes me feel that what we're doing actually has also practical use that is shorter term.
Right. And how like connected to that? Yeah, you mentioned that definitely the meta surfaces are very much in the limelight today of a lot of, say, commercialization efforts. So how do you see the landscape of metamaterials evolving, let's say, in the next decade or two? Like, what are the major goals to achieve? Like, will we ever see the the proverbial invisibility cloak or not?
Yeah, but I think the aspect that metasurfaces are still lacking, and I think it's the next big thing, is this angle of reprogrammability, reconfigurability, active responses. That's probably the next big um, breakthrough that will be in this area, and what will make it actually more mainstream. So the angle of time is something that we're investing a lot of energy on in my group and in general in the community. Adding reconfigurability This can go from wireless communications to optical frequencies. That's my bet on next. The other one that I think is very exciting and promising is the idea of using metasurface concepts for materials that are special, that are less mainstream for photonics. So all these phononic materials now, excitons are very popular, magnons, or in general polaritonic responses combined to photonic engineering. That's an aspect also that we are investing quite a lot of energy and resources on.
Right. So back to a bit different topics. So the journals are central to spreading the knowledge research has come up with since dawn of basically research as a field altogether. So, but the publishing system itself has really not changed much over, say, the past few hundreds of years. I mean, obviously, besides the digitization and everything speeding up thanks to the internet. So, are there any, let's say, changes that you would like to see in the current publishing system?
I think the one aspect that I find interesting or remarkable is that I would say it's difficult even to define what is a current publishing system, because my feeling is that this world has been evolving so fast. It's hard to tell what will happen next. And sometimes, yes, it seems like we are in a bubble in many aspects, because there are so many things that are being readjusted, and numbers are growing. So probably we will hopefully see some settling into some new equilibrium at some point. I feel when I was a student or postdoc was a lot easier to find the material one wants to read. You publish in your own community journals, and everything was probably a bit less stressed. But now, between these predatory journals and conferences, by the way, the race for citations, impact factors, the geopolitical challenges with the countries that create their own journals and want their scientists to publish in their own journals. It's very hard for me to predict what will happen next and where to put our bets. I like to publish in reputable journals, hopefully professional society journals, and at this point it's impossible even to respond to requests for reviewers from lower tier journals, or even requests to write papers or to contribute to special issues. It's a continuous race to grow numbers for everyone. So it's an interesting moment in time for this. There is also this issue about how to get recognized for the work we do. There is a lot of volunteer work we do in editing, in reviewing, in writing, and it's all subsidized by governments at the moment. So I don't know what will be the future of this world. At the same time, I see also many good players that have in their mind the interest of benefiting science. So I try to put my energy and my work towards working with people that have an interest in this, not in their own profits or their own personal interests, but more in just facilitating science and promoting the next generation of scientists.
Right. It kind of sounds like that you very much perceive the disproportion between the amount of papers published and those you're actually interested in.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's one aspect, and I mean, I don't know what is the solution, right? I think in general it's good that we have more people doing science and more people interested in producing scientific results. So I would not. I think for a society is healthy to invest in science, have more research funding, research groups that produce good science. It's not just about the discoveries. It's actually about education and building a next generation of our society that understands the problems at stake and can think. I think that's a big aspect why we get research funding. It's not that our research funding is always to just create a new technology. It's about really educating the next generation of scientists as a university. I mean, what I'm surprised is, in fact, recently I had this experience that I fell from one of these scams for a conference that asked for, that looked legitimate. I mean, we received so many emails of that are clearly predatory. You delete, I delete probably 10 a day. I don't know of this scam, but this specific one was maybe done better, and they had people listed that I know that are good, and the conference was in Boston and had a good offer about paying for the trip and waiving registration and all of this. And then I got so many emails from colleagues saying, you are listed now as a speaker here, and are you sure that this is a good conference? And then I realized, I mean, at this point we are so submerged. Also, it's not black and white anymore. There is a gradual range of being predatory, both in conferences and journals. There are the obvious ones that are unbelievably bad, and probably, I mean, I've never been, but I'm assuming there is not even a conference there. But there are also these conferences that actually exist and that we have all been, that actually try to just increase the number of talks, the number of invited people, the number of, and it's clear that the overall goal is to increase the profits of whoever is organizing, and charging large registration fees and offering the minimum support. For journals, it's the same thing. There is clearly amazing journals. There are clearly scam journals, many of them. You keep reading about this, but also there are these gray area journals in which the goal is clearly just to publish for the sake of charging authors publication fees, and so it's. I'm not complaining. I think we have so much also. So many tools at our hand to get. I like Google Scholar, for instance. I get alerts on many things from authors, from topics, and I think I feel I'm up to date. I'm not missing, and I read a lot, of course, but we also publish a lot, so it's normal. But I'm more interested in where this is going in terms of the open access, in terms of the charges that we are paying to publish, and in terms of many societies that are, or companies that publish for the sake of maximizing the profit, using much of the resources that come from the public money, the taxpayers' money.
Yeah, I'd say actually they even in some way charge the taxpayers twice, right? First, when the researchers submit and pay to for the publication, and second for the access, right? So.
I mean, yeah, this. I'm not a big proponent of this Plan S or the. I know in Europe it's a big deal about this. I mean, to me, that problem is easily solved by the fact that most journals allow you to publish on Arxiv some version of your paper. So I doubt, to be honest, that the average taxpayer cares about reading the journal. It's where the journal paper. I agree, as an idea, it's a wrong idea, but at the same time, I have to say that, for instance, nature journals, the editors do a lot of work to improve. And to be honest, the work they do, in my opinion, is good work. They help in assessing the quality of the papers and improving their content. And like that, I like a lot American Physical Society, American Chemical Society, IEEE. These are all great, AAAS. These are all great professional societies, profit or non-profit. It is true that there is this dichotomy of we review for free, we edit for free, we write the paper for free somehow. Of course, all of this is subsidized by the money we get from the government for our salaries. So one could argue that the taxpayers eventually is supporting all of this. And is there really a benefit in that, or what should we do? Should we impose some limits on how much these publishing houses can either charge or at least profit from these activities? But these are difficult questions. I don't think there is an easy solution to these problems, and I'm curious to see where this goes. People propose to remove peer review completely. I think peer review has addresses a need, so I wouldn't necessarily be drastic about this. But at the same time, yes, the slope of changes is so high, and it seems like at some point we have to reach an equilibrium in a way or another. So I'm curious to see what we do.
Yeah, I believe definitely the peer review is quite a useful tool. But at the same time, like looking at the position of an editor, it seems to me that, again, yeah, it's the professors who are doing it. And this function has been sort of turned into a virtue for people. Like you do work for a community. Right. But at the same time, like professors having so much on their plate all the time, I believe, let's say, a skilled manager with some critical amount of knowledge can actually do as good job as an editor, as a professor can. And, and the professor can save time and do something else instead. Right.
Absolutely. Anyways, I mean, my comment is that as a community, it's a great community. I feel that in general, we're very lucky to work in the scientific community. There is a general goal of benefiting society with our work. The community is friendly and tries to share, from what I can tell, on average. Of course, there are always bad players, but it's a very nice environment. I think I'm happy. At least my experience has been happy. I mean, very fruitful so far. And I have to say that sometimes working with companies, I don't have the same feeling. Sometimes companies can be very aggressive on the IP, on sharing or taking and not giving. And being used to the way we work in academia, I don't regret being in academia in that sense. I feel that in general, my experience has been that companies can be more cutthroat type of work, and I enjoy the way in which actually things work generally in academia, and how we work more as a community, and we try to do the best for a younger generation.
Right. I've noticed that in your group you publish quite a good number of papers in Arxiv. Why is that?
That actually, it's not necessarily my responsibility. I'm asked obviously a lot by my students and postdocs. I actually leave it completely open to the lead authors of the paper. So some group members are very eager to publish on Arxiv, some others less. I think when I discuss it with the younger group members, I feel that there are pros and cons. My feeling is that some of the group members that are applying for faculty jobs or are competing for awards, they may want to publish on Arxiv because they can list their paper on their CV. But so those are probably the papers you see on Arxiv. But in general, we don't have a policy that every paper goes on Arxiv. It's more whatever the or sometimes I've noticed that if they see a competing paper that appears on Arxiv, then they want to publish it too, while the paper maybe has been already in review for some time. But I really do not have a preference myself. I completely leave it up to what they want to do, as it's their work. Eventually, they put a lot of energy on it. So,
Right. Some say that the next step in the, let's say, improving the editorial process, or at least make a step in a positive direction, would be to start paying the reviewers. What do you think about that?
yeah, I've discussed this, and it's an interesting idea. Maybe there is a merit into this. My understanding, I've discussed with the editorial houses, they basically believe that it would be unmanageable. There are so many reviewers, and the money they would be able to afford to pay would be so little that there is really a practical issue of being able to do this. And then there are also other more complex problems of if there is an incentive in doing a review, then you may bias the system in some ways. If there is a financial incentive, also how do you then you would have to rate how good the review is, because someone could just send in one line. I'm not sure. There are so many problems. I can understand it's a very complicated idea to put actually in practice, but maybe some journals have started to do this, giving some form of rewards for the review. For instance, they waive fees for future publications if you do a number of reviews, or they give you some acknowledgement, like best reviewers of the year or some. So, I mean, these things I think are very good. These are good activities, but the payment, maybe it's not realistic. I heard many negative opinions from the players actually at stake, even if, of course, it's a popular opinion for the reviewers themselves, the academics that work on these reviews all the time. But I don't foresee this will come anytime soon.
Right. All right. Well, some accomplished researchers say that in today's productivity-oriented environment, they wouldn't be able to make the discoveries they have. Do you perceive this focus on productivity of today's academic world in any way?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I understand the comment, and I believe it's right in the sense that to do groundbreaking discoveries, you need time to focus, and sometimes one feels to be always in a grinder in which there is the next small thing coming in and the next pressure to do this or that. That's certainly an aspect, but at the same time, I have to say also the possibility to explore many things. Sometimes these groundbreaking ideas come serendipitously. So I don't know that I would drop everything in the hope that by just sitting down and thinking, I get to it. It is a possibility, and it is certainly many people have done breakthroughs this way. I wonder also how many other people have not done breakthroughs, or that their breakthroughs were not really as important. There is also a big factor of luck. So I think there is not a recipe for everyone, and also I don't know. I find these discussions a bit empty. It's. I mean, I feel that we are, as academics, we are spoiled. I mean, we have tenure, at least in the US. We have all the freedom to just drop everything and just do our own research. So there are benefits. I feel personally very privileged that I can work with a good group of great scientists, like a large group of great scientists. And yes, I have less time for myself. I have a lot of requests for meetings from everyone that produces great results. And sometimes these meetings are waste of time because the result is not maybe founded, but getting the chance of pushing so many directions in parallel rather than doing it myself. And yes, maybe the one direction I miss, maybe an idea that I will never be able to pursue, or that maybe I will pursue when I retire or slow down. But I think for now I'm happy how things are going. I think the benefit of seeing things moving fast, having just an idea, giving it or discussing it with a very bright young scientist that takes it over, does the calculations, and discusses back with me the next day. It's such a privilege for me because I could do it for one, but not for 40 ideas in parallel, right? So it is. Yeah, I mean, the problem is that time is limited. So there is just that's a physical limit we all have. But I believe it. I mean, I'm sure that Higgs had this comment, right? One of the Nobel laureates. And yeah, certainly, it's the. I mean, it's also true that sometimes the type of stuff that they complain about is things that maybe don't affect directly me. By the way, I'm in a very privileged position right now in which I'm not asked to do much in terms of administration or of teaching or of. I really can focus on the research and the mentoring of students and postdocs. So I I love it the way my work is today. I cannot complain that my time is drained by many different other things that are not science related. But it's true that sometimes I wish to have a full day in which no one asks me anything and I can just do calculations. I do it sometimes, by the way, but it's rare. Most of the time, there is. I prefer to timely respond to the group members and discuss the results. But yeah, it's a trade-off that we all have to make in life, I guess, where we invest our time.
Right. Yeah. Well, that concludes all the questions I had actually. So
great.
Right on time. Yeah. Thank you very much. You're very generous.
Thank you. Hope to meet in person at some point. Good luck with your adventures and career prospects.
Yeah. Thank you.